Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul Carter from Whittier, an attorney who produced that great map that shows Richard Nixon's history in Southern California and Orange County, and he's writing a book about Richard Nixon's native son, which will come out next year. I gave you a good plug. Paul.
Thank you very much. Mr. Buchanan, I was wondering if you can give us your thoughts regarding whether President Nixon had a so-called Southern strategy.
Well, clearly, Nixon went into all 11 southern states in 1966. He went in and campaigned against George Wallace and against Lester Maddox. And I've described that in my book. If you read the book, the libel against Richard Nixon is that he used racist tactics to win the South. That is false. The people that did that were the Democrats. Woodrow Wilson resegregated the federal government, carried all 11 southern states. FDR put Cactus Jack Garner of Texas on his ticket, who had imposed a poll tax. FDR put a Klansman on the Supreme Court. FDR put Jimmy Burns of South Carolina on the Supreme Court, who had blocked the anti-lynching law. So for decades, the Democratic Party used the issue of race to maintain the solidity of the Northern Liberal Southern coalition. What happened was Adlai Stevenson. The states Wallace carried are the same states Adlai Stevenson carried against Eisenhower. Was that because Stevenson was a tougher guy in foreign policy than Dwight David Eisenhower? No. Stevenson put on his ticket John Sparkman of Alabama, who was a signer of the Dixie Manifesto, which called for massive resistance to integration and massive resistance to the Supreme Court decision. That's when I was a senior in high school. So the Democrats were, as we wrote in that piece, look at the column I wrote with Nixon and for Nixon, where I said Nixon went south, and he said, look, let's leave it to the Dixiecrats to squeeze the last ounces of political juice out of the rotting fruit of racial injustice. And Nixon had voted was for the Civil Rights Act of 1957, of 1960, of 1964, 65, 68, and he desegregated the South. And once the South was desegregated, once that was off the table, naturally the South moved from its conservative convictions, moved straight into the Republican Party, but only after it was desegregated. So I think, that's a libel, and I'm happy to take that one on, and I've taken it on in that book. There were liberals whining and complaining. None of them whined and complained when FDR was winning all Confederate states every single time he ran, all 4 times.